All right, so you handed us this stack of insights on AI in Dutch healthcare education, 50 plus educators, all kind of grappling with AI's potential. Where do we even begin? I guess let's just dive right in. One thing that really jumped out at me was how often the educators would ask, "Where were we?" It was almost like a touchstone for them throughout the masterclass.
It really was, almost like they had to remind themselves, to take a step back amidst all the excitement of this new technology.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of excitement, you highlighted how much energy there was in these takeaways. There's this real sense of AI going from just a buzzword to like a genuine game changer in healthcare education. One participant even said they felt 10 years younger. What was it about that particular takeaway that struck you?
It wasn't just like the enthusiasm, but the specifics. This educator wasn't talking about AI replacing them, but about it taking over things like, lesson planning and giving personalized feedback.
Yeah.
And that seemed to free them up to focus on that human element of teaching again, which clearly re-energized them.
That's fascinating. So AI as a tool to like reclaim that passion for teaching. But I mean, we can't just ignore the concerns, right? There's this idea of Ilmi learning that pops up more than once. What is that all about?
I think it's that question whether students are actually like really engaging with the material or just using AI as a shortcut. Like imagine instead of wrestling with a complex medical case study, a student just asks the AI for the diagnosis. They miss out on that crucial process of thinking it through themselves.
Okay, that makes sense. But hasn't this always been an issue, though? It's like plagiarism got a digital makeover, right?
Exactly. And a lot of the educators brought that up. We're not really dealing with completely new problems. Think
Mhm.
back to like rote memorization. This is like its digital cousin. So the question is, how do we adapt our teaching strategies to this new landscape?
So instead of trying to banish AI altogether, how can we embrace it? These educators seem to have some concrete ideas about that. One that comes up a lot is the prepare framework. Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. So prepare. It's all about crafting better prompts for AI, almost like speaking its language. The P stands for prompt, and that's where it all begins. Educators are encouraged to think beyond simple questions. Instead of asking AI to summarize this article, they might ask it to analyze this article from the perspective of, say, a cardiologist treating a diabetic patient.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's about pushing the AI beyond just like basic regurgitation of information and into a more, I don't know, nuanced understanding.
Exactly. And it goes beyond the prompt itself. The R in prepare stands for role. Educators found it helpful to assign specific roles to the AI. For example, they might ask it to act as a devil's advocate during a debate or to simulate, like a patient interview.
Wow. That sounds incredibly helpful for healthcare education. I can see how that would really push students to think on their feet and apply what they're learning. Were there any examples of how they use the E and prepare explicit?
A lot of the educators emphasized how important it was to be super specific with the AI.
Hmm.
Instead of asking for a summary, they might ask for a concise summary that highlights the ethical implications. Being really explicit helps ensure that you're getting the information you need.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like giving the AI clear instructions, like programming it almost. It's interesting. I'm sensing a theme here. It's almost like AI is less of a substitute for teachers and more like a sophisticated tool they can use.
You're exactly right. It's about empowering educators, not replacing them. And one of the areas where this is really exciting is the role of emotions in learning.
You're right. That's where this gets really interesting. I mean, here we are talking about cutting edge technology, but these educators keep coming back to the importance of emotions in learning.
It might seem a little counterintuitive, right? But one educator put it perfectly. Learning is an emotional experience, not just, knowledge transfer. Think about it. You remember things better, you internalize them more deeply when they're tied to an emotion.
Oh, absolutely. Those aha moments, those breakthroughs, they stay with you because they're exciting. So, how does AI play into this?
That's where the E at the end of prepare comes in, emotion. Educators talked about how AI could help them tap into that emotional connection. For example, some used AI to give more personalized feedback, making it more meaningful for students. Others used it to create these interactive scenarios that felt more engaging, less like a textbook.
So, AI becomes a tool to make learning more emotionally resonant, almost like having a co-pilot in the classroom, helping to steer students towards those aha moments that really make learning stick. But, I mean, it's not all smooth sailing, right? There's this sense of urgency in some of these takeaways, this feeling of we need to adapt and fast. What did you make of that?
Oh, it's definitely there. Almost a sense of, like, we must. But, every generation probably thinks they're living through the defining moment.
Right. But with AI, it does feel different. It's not just another tool. It's almost like another entity in the classroom, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And that's what's both so exciting and a little bit daunting. We're used to technology following our instructions.
Yeah.
But AI can surprise us. It can come up with unexpected answers. It challenges our traditional ideas of control and expertise.
It's like this constant push and pull, right, between being amazed by AI and also realizing we're still figuring out how it all fits in.
Exactly. And it brings us back to that question, where were we? Like these educators are reminding themselves, reminding us to not lose sight of why we're here.
It's a question that hits even harder when we think about the potential downsides of relying too much on AI, like with this whole elimi learning thing.
Right. It's one thing to use AI as a tool, but we don't want it to become a crutch. Take clinical reasoning, for instance. If a student can just ask AI for a diagnosis, are they really developing those critical thinking skills that a healthcare professional needs?
That's a really good point. It's the difference between memorizing a textbook and actually knowing how to apply that knowledge in the real world.
Exactly. And that's why what the educators said about the A&R and prepare really stood out to me. They emphasized how important it is to really ask the AI probing questions. Don't just accept the first answer it gives you. And the rate part of the framework, that's crucial too.
Rate, what does it refer to?
It's all about teaching students to look at the information the AI provides and not just take it at face value. Encourage them to ask, is this accurate? Is it biased? What other perspectives might be out there?
So it's about fostering a healthy skepticism, helping them become discerning consumers of information, even when it comes from AI.
Exactly. We don't want to end up with a generation that blindly trusts algorithms. We need them to think for themselves. It's a good question. To challenge the information they're given.
Which brings up this interesting tension, right? We're talking about how AI can personalize learning like never before. But at the same time, these educators are saying it's important not to lose sight of that shared experience, that human element of learning.
It's about finding that balance between personalization and collaboration, individual exploration and, collective meaning making.
Which makes me think about the presentation element of prepare. Was there anything in the takeaways about how they saw AI being used for, like, group projects or collaborative learning?
Definitely. A lot of the educators mentioned using AI to build interactive simulations where students have to work together to solve a problem maybe or make a decision.
So instead of everyone being off in their own little AI bubble, they're actually using AI to connect with each other, to learn from each other.
Precisely. It's about finding ways to leverage AI to create richer, more collaborative learning environments.
That's really cool. It seems like there's so much potential there. But I have to say, with all this talk about how AI is going to revolutionize education, it's easy to get caught up in the hype. How do we know if this is the real deal or just another fad in edtech?
It's a million-dollar question, isn't it? I don't think there's an easy answer. But what struck me about these educators was their optimism. It wasn't naive, though. They weren't shying away from the challenges, but they weren't letting fear hold them back either.
They seem to be approaching AI with both curiosity and caution, which I find really refreshing.
Me too. And I think that's a really important takeaway for all of us. It's not about blindly embracing every new piece of technology that comes along. It's about asking the right questions. How can this help us achieve our goals? And how can we use it in a way that aligns with our values?
Values like critical thinking, collaboration, and that fundamental human connection.
Exactly. Those are the things that make education truly meaningful. And those are the things we need to hold on to even as we step into this new world of AI.
I couldn't agree more. But, as we're going through these takeaways, I keep wondering about this sense of urgency that keeps coming up, this feeling that we need to figure this out now. It makes me wonder if it's adding to the pressure educators are already facing.
Yeah, it's definitely something to be mindful of. And it speaks to the need for more support, more dialogue. We can't just throw educators into the deep end with AI and expect them to sink or swim.
We need to give them the tools, the training, the support they need to succeed.
Absolutely. And that includes giving them the space to share their experiences, their successes, their struggles, their questions.
Spaces where they can come together, learn from each other, and support each other as they figure out how to integrate AI into their classrooms.
Exactly. It's about fostering that culture of collaboration and shared learning. And not just for students, but for educators as well.
Because at the end of the day, education is a human endeavor. And while AI can be an amazing tool, it's up to us to guide it, to use it in a way that benefits all learners.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And it brings us right back to that question. Where were we? It's about staying grounded,
Mhm.
keeping our focus on what truly matters.
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves, probably. Not just about AI in education, but about every new technology that comes our way. It's like that question, where were we? And it's almost a reality check, right? Like they were getting swept up in all this AI stuff, but they had to remind themselves what matters most.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's even more powerful when you remember these are healthcare educators. Their students are going to be dealing with like life and death situations.
Exactly. And it makes those worries about Alumna learning even scarier. We don't want doctors who just rely on algorithms. They need to think for themselves.
Absolutely. And that's something a lot of the educators brought up. They were really emphasizing the rate stage of prepare. Like, it's not enough to just get information from AI. Students need to know how to evaluate it.
So, like, alongside all this amazing AI tech, we also need a healthy dose of skepticism.
Exactly. Teach them to question everything. Is this biased? What's missing from this? Are there any ethical concerns?
Wow. So it's like we need to train this whole new generation of like AI whisperers,
Mm,
people who can use it but also see its limitations.
right. And that's where the human educators come in. They're the guides. They're the ones asking the tough questions and making sure students don't just take AI at face value.
It really is like a balancing act, huh? This back and forth between the incredible potential of AI and the importance of, the human element in all of this.
Oh, for sure. It's a delicate dance. And it means we can't just settle. We have to keep adapting, keep figuring out where we are and where we want to be. I think that's why where were we is such a powerful question. It forces us to keep our bearings, as things change so fast.
And maybe it's a question we should all be asking, right? Not just about AI and education, but about any new technology.
Yeah,
It reminds us to stay grounded, to hold on to what matters.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Technology can be amazing, but it's just a tool. The real magic happens when we combine it with, human ingenuity, compassion, all of that.
And maybe that's the most important takeaway from all of this. Well, thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive. It's been enlightening to everyone listening. Keep those great questions coming and keep exploring how we can learn and grow in this amazing age of AI.